Okay, so Alba is from the University of Santiago de Compostela, and she's professor of law.
Yes.
If I'm wrong, right?
Administrative law.
Okay, administrative law. And why she's here? Because we are really interested in environmental conflicts. We spent last week 2 days in Coimbra discussing many things above among from different perspectives, but one of the focus was global environmental justice. And here in Pontevedra we have this case of Ence that most of you are aware of. We had a demonstration last week that was quite violent, and one of my PhDs, a couple of my PhD students were there, also Sophia was there, so they were shocked because they didn't know anything, and they saw like these people, throwing bombs and insulting people in the street, in a very violent way. So I thought it was a very good idea to have somebody who was really involved in the process of advising the city council in this battle that I think lasts more than 20 years and is still ongoing. And so Alba is with us, and so the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning. I'm going to try to explain the legal history of Ence. That's quite difficult to follow because there have been many issues in the last more than 20 years, since 1988, when the new Seashore Act was passed. It was an act that tried to make that all the shore was public domain. So in Spain, the shore is public, free, and of common use for everyone, all the shore. And private activities in the coastline only can be there if they have a public concession or authorization to be there. So, but we have there. This is the article of the Act passed in 1988. I recommend to read the preamble of the Act, that is quite visual to understand what was the objectives of that Act. And it says the use of the maritime terrestrial public domain, and in any case of the sea and its shoreline, will be free, public, and free for common uses. And then the exceptions, uses that have special circumstances of intensity, that would be economic activities, dangerousness, or profitability, and those that require the execution of works and facilities that should be stable, may only be covered by the existence of a reservation, assignment, authorization, or concession. Authorization is given to activities that need to remain less than 4 years in the shore, in the sea line, and concessions are for activities that should remain there more than 4 years, or that have infrastructures that need to be stable, that are not removable, easily removable. Okay, so that's the beginning. And the first question we have to ask is what we mean by seashore, and what is the coast for us, okay? And that's a legal concept. It's not a nature concept. It's a legal concept that is explained by the Article 3 of that Act, but it's also a contentious issue. The Partido Popular, when it was in government in the early teens of this, between, I don't know, it was between, I think, 2012, 2016, changed the Coast Act because they wanted to change the concept. And in blue you have the subtle changes. You can't really tell what are the changes, but I'm going to change what is inside those changes. So, how we define what is public domain? where it starts the private and where it limits with the public domain. We say the maritime terrestrial zone or space between the low tide line or maximum equinoctial life line and the limit to which the waves reach in the largest known storms. So, where the sea arrives in the largest storms, that is the coast. That was the original text of the Act. But in 2013, there was a subtle change that we decided to introduce only those 6 words with the technical criteria established by regulation. And the regulation that develops the Act says that we measure those maximum storms only in a period of 5 years, and it has to, the sea has to have a right and at least twice to that maximum length. So the coastline is will be smaller than before. The public domain of the coastline will be smaller because before we measured the public domain with the maximum known storms. So we have registered since the early 90s. So only once in maybe 1930 the storm arrived there, that's public. Now it has to be in the previous 5 years and at least twice it has to be, the waves have to go there. So if not, that's not public domain. So that's one of the changes that will reduce the public domain. The second change is here. That's because of the pressure of British and Germans that live in the Mediterranean coast and have houses with marinas, and they have even initiatives in the European Parliament. So those places that are artificially sea lines, because the marinas are constructed, now are private properties. Before they were public. Even the land gained because of artificial construction, when it has sea, it's public. Now it isn't. That's another change. And the third change are the dunes that are dead, that don't move, that are consolidated. Those, if they are not necessary to the stability of the beach, also are not public domain. So there are only 3 changes, but are quite significant to reduce the coastline. So that's...
Excuse me, the last one was what? What is that?
The dunes.
The dunes, sorry.
Yes, that are there, that don't move with the tides, with the wind. They don't necessarily they aren't necessarily public domain. So we have 3 changes, but all the 3 are in the way of reducing the protection of the public shore. Okay? And there was another change that affects what private activities can have concessions and what is the time limit to have those concessions. So we have a general rule for all the public domains, not only the maritime shore, but also for forests that are public or for public buildings, that concessions can last over 75 years. But we have concessions that have started before the changes in 2013, and the 2013 reform tries to make like say borrón y cuenta nueva.
Start from scratch.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one of the the issues that affect Ence, because Ence is there since, I think, 1958, and it had a concession until 2018, okay? But now they are giving a new prórroga, I don't say, I don't know how to extension, an extension, and so the debate is if the extension starts fresh new, or if all the period it had concession counts until the 75 years. So that's one of the debates we have over the table, and that we have several tribunal decisions in the past year and so. Okay. Oh, that's the other way. So, Ence has tried to stay in where it is. I don't know. This is Ence. Ence is here, okay? And you can see the green line is where the public maritime domain goes, so Ence is inside the green line, okay? You can see this if you go to the Ministerio de, now it's Obras Públicas or Fomento, I don't know, it has a web where you can consult all the limits of the maritime terrestrial zone, okay? So Ence is there, and also what is interesting, it is this one, the pink one, or the this mustard color. So this is an area of protection that is added to the public domain. We call it servidumbre. So in those private property, there are also limitations of property uses. They have to ask for authorization to make plantations, they can build in that area, they can close that area. So the public domain is, it kind of extends over the private property, because there are also legal constraints to private property because of that servidumbre. Okay? So
sorry, the servidumbre applies where?
It's this
between
after when you finish the public domain, there is a piece.
Yes.
It's about 100 meters. That has quite big amounts of limitation of uses. Okay. So, and this is how you can see physically where the seashore, where the public domain goes. When you find this, in Galician we call it marcos, in Spanish we call it mojones, and I don't know how is it called in English, but it's the delimitation of the public domain. And this is landmark, okay, yeah. Dominio público marítimo terrestre. So, that is Carnota. You can see there is one here, one here, one here, and one here. So, those are the marks where the sea line goes, with the public part of the sea line goes. So, and that's Ence. So, we were here. So Ence is in public domain, as you have seen, and in the past 20 years or so, there has been quite a lot of legal moves in order to remain there. And there is a strong battle, especially with the Pontevedra municipality and some ONGs and some NGOs, local NGOs, especially Asociación de Protección de Defensa da Ría, And another little NGO that is Salvemos Arria has also had a legal role in this period. So, what were the 5 main ways that Ence tried to use to stay longer there? The first one was to push Galician autonomous regulation, that is the supramunicipal Galician legislation passed by the Fraga government. And with that legislation, if a factory or any other project and infrastructure is considered to be of supramunicipal interest, the autonomous community government can declare a plan, a project, supramunicipal, and that declaration makes that all urban municipal controls disappear. So it was a way to get the Pontevedra municipality out of the game, because Ence said it would build a tissue factory next to the other factory to transform the paper into real paper, and profiting that initiative, the government declared a supramunicipal project, that tissue party, and so the Pontevedra municipality couldn't give the urban license, had to reform the urban planification of Pontevedra, and all the changes necessary to make that there. So that was the first step with Pontevedra's position, okay? And that was in the late 90s, I think, more or less. In the second place, it tried to explore something that appeared around 2 weeks ago. In fact, Mario asked me, "Is this going to be like this?" But okay, it was explored also in the, I don't know, I have there, I will show you after. It was before with Cristina Narbona's Minister of Environment in the, was Zapatero's government maybe, or I think it was in the early 2000s. So, what was it? Declaring that the coastline was so artificial now, because of the factory being there for 40 years, that really it had no natural values, so it should lose its public domain consideration. That's one issue that is allowed in the Seashore Act, that the coast public domain can lose its consideration because it loses its natural qualities. So Ence tried to explore that thing in the early 2000s, and now it's trying to explore it again, okay? As a way, and that you have to understand that, in the legal regulation of public domain, it says that public domain can't be sold, okay? Things that are full of us, the commons, can't be sold. But if it loses the consideration of public domain and it becomes what we call propiedad patrimonial of the administration, then it can be sold. It's like a step that you can go up and you can go down. Something can be declared public domain and can be desafectado, that is undeclared, and it becomes a patrimonial good, and then it can be sold. Mm-hmm. So Ence tried to explore the denaturalization path in order to have a patrimonial good and then to be able to buy it. Okay? Third, And now it's also exploring it again. That was exploring the past, and now it's trying it again. It tried to change the nature of the public domain. It is that places. And so it has the marine port right near Ence, so it tried to become dominio público portuario, ports public domain, and start a fresh new concession under the ports legislation. So we forget the coast legislation and we use the port legislation, and there is also concessions under the port legislation. Fourth, it tried to, and it succeeded, to change the Coastal Act and to have an extension of the concession in the Coastal Act. That was accomplished in 2013 under the Popular Party government. Okay? And fifth, that is this year, it was passed the Climate Change Act, and that Climate Change Act tried to end the discussions over when the extension started, if in 2013 or back when each facility started the concession. Okay, so that was something that was also dealt with in the Climate Change Act, and I'm going to show that we had apparently victory in the Congress and the last minute amendment in the Senate that changes a little the new Climate Change Act, not in a good direction. Okay. So the concession was extended after 2013 reform until 2073. So it was quite long, almost a perpetual concession, and you can see there, those are the marinas, and how also the regulation, the 2013 regulation changed the concessions for those marinas, and I think there is some reference there to the European Parliament. I don't know. Maybe it's in that you can. That's El País, and it's only a part of the information. We have a reference there. So, and you have several news there of what happened with the extension, the 2013 extension. So that extension was went to the tribunals because both Greenpeace, the Pontevedra Municipality, and APDR, Asociación de Defensa de la Ría, didn't agree with it. So the extension was decided by Rajoy's government in the last minutes of his government. The last few days, what we call government in function, and governments in function, trying in the last days, can't decide many things. I mean, you have a regulation that says they can't decide ordinary administration procedures, but they don't have the power to have new initiatives or so on. But they decided to grant the concession for those 75 years. But I think it was last year, there was a decision of the Audiencia Nacional saying that that extension was illegal, so Ence now has the old deadline that was 2000, I think, because they already had an extension, I think it was 2032 or so. Okay? So we have that decision, and it is quite interesting to read this part of the judicial decision, because it says, it declares that the public duty in those maritime areas is to protect them and take all the conservation, protection and restoration measures necessary to grant public use of the sea. So it states what were the means of the Coastal Act that have to be accomplished also in those in that place where Ence is placed. And the decision is based in the discussion was if Ence could be placed somewhere else or it has to be placed there. So Ence argued that they needed water and they had to be there because they use the port of Marín to transport and to get things for the factory, and the Audiencia Nacional says that it wasn't really clear that there was no alternatives, and they didn't explain why other alternatives weren't valid and why Ence couldn't be moved somewhere else. That is the discussion, the public discussion over these past 20 years, to move it somewhere else because it's not necessary to be near the sea line.
They want to move the entire like the question is more about it being at the shoreline rather than the factory in itself being polluting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because even the debate is to move it somewhere else in Galicia.
Okay. But the factory by the shoreline is quite good now because it has a lot of runoff. So, like paper factories have a lot of polluting, and it's good to go in the sea. I mean, not good, but for them it's good.
It's easier.
Yeah, it's easier than in a closed land.
Okay. And that's the change in the Climate Change Act in 2021. Article 20 was a quite debated article because unexpectedly there was a strange coalition of contesters of that article. That this article is pushed by the central government with PSOE and Podemos, but the amendments were made by Partido Popular and Bloque Nacionalista Galego, that is the party that governs Pontevedra, and it's been battling for 20 or 30 years to get Ence out of the RIA. So, the Article 20 that was 19 in the proposal, so if you read news about it, it's going to speak about Article 19, but finally it's Article 20, says that those periods can exceed 75 years, that is what says that law, and it says that they are null and void the administrative acts that are issued after the entry into force of this law. And that is the change made in the Senate. Only decisions made after entering into force the Climate Change Act 2021 are null. But the ones that were taken between 2013 and 2021, it seems that unless we have legal decisions like that one of Audiencia Nacional, tribunal decisions might remain correct. Okay? That was a final last minute change, but it's quite significant. I think that change to be passed in the Senate, it had to have it had to be backed by the central government, parties in the central government, and I think it tries to avoid the monetary indemnizaciones, compensations, that maybe we should have to pay if they were annulled, all the extensions between 2013 and 2021. In any case, Ence has a judicial decision saying that the extension is illegal, so it doesn't affect Ence. But we have to see that we have that change there. And it says here, de momento zanja el posible carácter retroactivo del apartado. Okay.
Can I make a question?
Yeah.
Why do you think that the left-wing party Benega in Galicia is supporting this amendment?
Because I think it isn't quite consistent in its environmental positions. I think Pontevedra's battle is like an island into the general position of the party. I think Benega usually its political positions try to defend economic activities in Galicia, and the amendments were set to protect industria conservera.
Canning industry, fishing
industry, fishing industry that have concessions in the coastline, and they said when they found that affected also Ence, they said, well, Esther for Ence. They said, yes, the amendment was like activities that make traditional marine, something like they understood that that wasn't applicable for Ence. But I think Benega, and you can see it in the position with Alcoa or with Meirama, Aspontes, the electrical power stations, is not quite consistent with the position that they maintain about Ence. I mean, there's some kind of incoherence in the way they act in one thing and the other. And they were quite active against the Climate Change Act, and it was especially because of that article. That article wasn't okay. So it's something strange or inconsistent.
One question. Do you think that these regulatory changes have something to do also with the climate change, in the sense that you have a short in time definition of what the coastal area is, because actually in 10 or 15 years you cannot be somehow stuck in an older definition because the level of the sea is changing.
In
or
fact,
it's just a new legal project.
In fact, Article 20, I didn't put all the article, but the first part of the article says that any installations or activities in the coastline have to have a climate impact assessment in order to see how it's going to affect the climate change in those projects. So, yeah. Okay, keep going. Well, declaring the coast denaturalized. You can see the first decision was in 2007, okay? And now they are still trying to do that. The second one was trying to make it public poor domain, and that's the new last week. But that is the decision in 2005 of the Ministry of Ministry of Fomento, saying that denaturalization declaration was not possible. So it's something that keeps coming over the years, but for the moment it hasn't been succeed. And there is another contentious issue that we have integrated prevention pollution control. That's a regulation that comes up from the EU. So all the activities that have a high risk level have to have a permit, integrated environmental permit. And the Spanish regulation says that when asking that permit, before starting the administrative procedure, you have to ask in the municipality a report, a urban planning report, and if that urban planning report is negative, it doesn't goes, says I think. In any case, if the urban planning report regulated in this article is negative, regardless of the moment in which it was issued, the competent body to grant the said authorization will issue a reasonable resolution ending the procedure. So, if Pontevedra said that that area is a natural area or is a residential area, okay, not an industrial area, the permit, the environmental permit can be granted. So this is one of the debates that we have in the past, I don't know, maybe 15 years, because Pontevedra still hasn't changed its urban planning. So it says that it's a natural area where no industrial activities can be placed. So when Ence had to ask for its integrated permit, the municipal authority said, no, here it can be placed. So the autonomous community should have had to say, no, you don't have your permit. That's what the Spanish Act says, okay? But the Junta said that they were waiting for the municipal report, and they decided to grant the integrated pollution control permit. So there were also trials because of the integrated pollution control permit that lost the Junta. But Junta interpreted that judicial resolution saying that what was missing was to make the publication of the permit in the official journal, but every other thing was okay. So every other, 5-6 years, when Ence has to renew its permit, we have a debate on if the land where it is placed is an industrial site or not. So there are several issues running there.
Something like, just to be clear, like, I understand that there are different laws.
Yeah.
And some of them are in conflict with one another.
Yeah.
But is there a hierarchy of law? Where like, there is one law that supersedes all the others?
No.
So they're all at the same level?
Yeah.
And that is the
Even the autonomous communities laws and the state laws are at the same level, given that they are ruling something that is competent, the state or the autonomous community.
Okay.
So, Galicia is competent in territorial planning, for example, exclusively competent in territorial planning, but, for example, regulating public domain issues is a state competence. So you can have conflicts that are solved by the Constitutional Tribunal. If there are conflicts between issues that are touching, because you can rule something and you can regulate something that is urban planning or territorial planning that applies over a maritime public domain, for example.
Yeah. So the conflict is between jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
And,
in theory,
and over political positions, because the autonomous community government has all over this period, except for the bipartito, that was only 4 years, backed Ence's position, and now we're going to explain why. But usually, except for the period of the Popular Party, the central government has had a more green position, and also the municipal government has a position to get rid of Ence. So, okay?
yeah, I understand, yeah, because it's like, I mean, different ways of understanding this issue can coexist. They can have the national law, the autonomous law, municipality laws, but the problem is when the jurisdictions overlap, then the contradiction is meaningful, then it's important. But if I control this and I control this, they can have different laws. Nothing happens there, but when overlaps, because this is very common, but usually law don't understand that they can overlap somehow. You know? So yeah, I understand now the problem.
Okay. And there we have the supramunicipal legislation to hinder that urban municipal controls. That's the decision in 2003 to declare that proyecto sectorial, okay, and the declaration of the Pontevedra municipality. It won't change its urban planning because of the Xunta's decision, and there was also judicial decisions about this, and when the justice decides that Ence has to have a municipal license as any other activities. So, however, no matter we have that decision, the tribunal say they have to have municipal license. So there has been several ways to
circumvent the power of municipalities.
And we're going to take a look at the players and who are the actors in this issue. So we have, as you have seen, the Pontevedra's municipality that has a quite consistent position over this period, trying to find different ways to keep Ence in kind of an unstable situation, trying to push them out of the RIA. Okay? We have also Asociación de Defensa da RIA that has been, the name explains everything, okay? Has been, I think, the main actor in all this period. And
who are they?
It's an NGO, a Pontevedra's NGO, that its only focus or its only activity is to protect the RIA, and they have been for 20 years.
I mean, is it mainly like, I don't know, is it a particular type of citizens, or like is it like mainly academics, or is it mainly like fishermen, or is it like
I think it's a mixture.
Okay.
Yeah, it's people from Pontevedra that I think most of them are public servants, I think, but I mean, it's in their free time now. Most of them are retired, so they have all the time of the world to do those things. So they have been quite active, making questions. For example, this is a demand of information under the European Directive of Access to Information to know what the limits and what are the parameters in water pollution. So they have been quite active all this period. We have those unexpected partners sometimes, because BNG is the party that rules in Pontevedra for the last, I think, almost 20 years and so, but in this Climate Change Act has been in the same position as Partido Popular. That's quite strange. And I think it's important to show one thing that it was significant, that is in 2002, Ence was condemned, had a conviction for ecological crime. It was also APDR, la Asociación de Defensa de la Ría, who followed this trial, that ended up in an agreement before the judicial rescission, because APDR couldn't keep going because they didn't have money to pay assessments and so on. So they decided to have an agreement with the public prosecutor, and the decision was to convict two of the members of the corporate board, two recently retired members of the corporate board, and to keep with declaration of innocence, of non-conviction, to the members of the corporate board that were still in charge. Ence was privatized in 2001, and the conviction is in 2002. So there was a change in the board because of the privatization. So that was the end of the ecological crime trial. It was successful, partially successful. They had to pay an amount to restore the area, but it ended like this, okay, in tablas.
And did they pay?
Yeah, they did, yeah. Yeah, because for them it was the best solution. I mean, it was cheaper than going to jail. The corporate board that were still in charge of the corporation. So, and we have also the best friends. That's the Junta and Ence have had love history all this period, and they even signed an agreement in 2001 where Ence committed to doing several things, reducing their pollution, changing some the production process and so on, and the Junta would, the way you said, grant them a license for the emissary, the maritime emissary, and discharge of wastewater and some other things. So that's a way of making things going better, but not pressuring them too much. Okay. And there is, I think, one issue that is quite significant is that we have revolving doors. The Fraga's environmental minister, autonomous environmental minister, is now since 2019 consejero coordinador de Ence, so it's one of the main people in the direction of Ence, and he has been on the board since, I think, 2009, yeah. We have also in that direction board Isabel Potocino, that was environmental minister of Aznar in the central government, and that's, I think, worst, the subdirector of environmental quality, that is the department of Galician's government that's in charge of licenses, environmental licenses, is the wife of the factory's director. So the links are quite close, and we have also those issues there, okay? And Ence keeps saying it's a biofactory. If you listen to Ence's advertisements and marketing, They call themselves also biofactory.
Vegan biofactory.
They have all those labels, the European Eco Label, and Nordic Eco Label, and EMAS, and INOR, and FSFA, and everything. So it's a factory that claims as a green factory, and that's it. I don't know if I talk too much or too little.
No, I think that's really interesting because we are not used to this, law language. No, we are from different perspectives. I think this was absolutely useful. Any questions?
I'm David. I'm interested about this resort that the state has to disempower municipalities when they don't like what municipalities could demand. So this way in which they consider the project as a supra-municipal project, then automatically the control belongs to the autonomous community or the state, or who is in charge of that?
Okay, let's see. The distribution of powers in Spain says the state and the autonomous communities have political autonomy. So, and the municipal powers have administrative autonomy. So it's different. Yeah. What is the difference? Galicia, in the areas where it has powers, can pass laws, has a parliament that can decide over the issues that are of their competence, and the state also. The municipal power is like a second step power that has to comply with the autonomous or the state's decisions and laws. So there is kind of a supervision over the municipal powers.
Didn't know that. So is it written in the constitution? That it has only municipal administrative powers and not political powers?
In a sense, it is. Because our constitution is quite open because, for example, the autonomous communities' powers could be taken by the autonomous community that could be constituted. The constitution didn't think that all the Spanish territory would have autonomous communities. It could have been some parts of a territory, something more or less like Italy, that the regions are different levels of regions.
Estatuto especial.
Well, and here we could have regions with autonomous communities and a part of the territory governed from Madrid with central powers. It was open. Okay? So, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
But if we have autonomous community, that was the case, all the territory is divided in autonomous communities, what the constitution says is that it has a parliament and so on, so it has political autonomy. The municipal authorities or the diputaciones that are also municipal authorities don't have that.
So I'm just trying to think about this process in which, there are, a municipality is very affected by the presence of this factory, and it is opposing to the existence of this factory, and somehow it can generate some laws to prevent, the action of the factory, and they resort to this supra-municipal declaration, and now is there is no way to consider, are the affected municipalities included in the decision-making process somehow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
those administrative procedures have reports from the municipality, there is an audience to the municipality, a hearing, okay. So they participates in those procedures, but the decision is not theirs.
So it's
Okay.
like Junta.
Yeah.
Junta, okay.
And there is a certain protection of the powers of the municipalities, because our constitutional tribunal has said that what has to be kept is what they call autonomía local autonomy. So the the court says that it's a matter of interpretation.
Yeah.
But when something touches what is the core of the local autonomies, that's not legal. The powers that the municipality has to have to defend the local interest, that's local autonomy. So it's a tiny line, and it's something that has to be debated, because it's not defined anywhere.
So difficult.
Yeah. So when it comes to, for example, Rajoy's government also made a reform of the basic local act, okay? And the reform said that the municipalities didn't have powers over social issues. And the Constitutional Tribunal said that reform of the local law invaded local autonomy, so declared illegal that reform. But it was like 5 years later, after the decision of the Constitutional Tribunal, because they said that was one of the interests that should all the citizens that live in those places be like protected by their municipalities. Okay.
Yeah, this is a mess.
Sí.
I have a question. Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. And to me, like, maybe you don't know about that because we were covering the legal aspects, so that the question might be a little bit off topic. But something that I'm interested in is whether any work has been done with the workers themselves and the communities to make sure that they are not left, behind. And if Ence goes away, basically, because I imagine that there is going to leave a big gap in the community, like lots of workers and supporting industries are going to be affected. So, is this just a legal battle, or is it also like something that has been done in sort of consultation with the workers and the communities,
No.
and giving them some options to say, this is what's going to happen after?
No, I think there is quite a big confrontation, and the workers are with the corporation, with Ence, and there is like I think there is such a confrontation that there are no talks between the two sides. And Ence has all this year paid many associations of Pontevedra, sports associations, cultural associations, to organize things and to have the public opinion on their side. But there are no bridges between the two worlds at all.
That's a big problem, I imagine.
Yeah. Maybe. One issue that can go in the way you say is that everyone asks Ence to remain near Pontevedra. To be out of the RIA, but to be near Pontevedra, in a way to keep those employments in the area. But there are no real talks. There is no forums to speak or so on now.
But I think that the outreach of the activities of Ence is much more than the RIA. It's all the eucalyptus industry that is really, destroying. It doesn't really leave anything to the territory. Just an extractive kind of activity. that is destroying native variety of flora and also like the traditional use of land, like cattle or. So it's really something that is not just Pontevedra, it's like a systemic kind of problem. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the factory? What do you think?
Yeah,
but you know, I mean, that you know more or less what's.
I think it's going to end up going out of the area. I mean, the latest judicial and legal decision can kind of pave the way to I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. And I think the Galician government, I think, is going to try to use some of the European funds to pay to move the factory.
That's the annoying part, like, because we're going to pay the owners, but
Yeah.
the workers are going to be left like with nothing.
Yeah.
It's so like I don't know. I think that the funds should be used to actually give the workers just transition, isn't it? Like
I think they should
rather
occupy the
than
factory.
paying
They should occupy the factory.
This is gonna be someone else's problem. So
Yes.
it's like, and probably it will be coercive, all the transition again. So this is like, is there any plan now that we somehow know that they are gonna be moved out, that they are gonna be moved in some place? Is there any plan or some kind of a space of conversation, some guy, at least one guy who is thinking about the transition
Yeah.
to make it fair?
I don't know if there is some guy thinking about anything, but I think one of the projects that Galicia puts in place for the European funds, that is the textile factory in Mariña de Lugo, to transform eucalypto into textiles, might be that solution. I mean, a way not for the workers of Ence that aren't so much. I mean, Ence, I don't know, has around 200 workers or so.
I have heard something like that. But
Yeah.
there are complementary businesses as well.
Yeah,
right?
and those complementary business is the forest industry, and they are pushing quite hard for making that textile factory in Mariña de Lugo. That is the area where most of the plantations are placed.
No, but there are.
So
I guess I have seen that somehow right in the demonstration. One of the pictures that you show, that some people were complaining about. I don't know, that Ence is generates part of the activity in the port of Marin. So you want to destroy the 50% of the traffic in the Marin port. So the traffic in the Marin port. So they are not in Ence, I guess, but they are in the port of Marin and they are affected somehow. So they need a solution. I mean, they are asking for a solution as well. So it's tricky.
But how has no one ever talked to the workers? Like, it's actually, like, that's shocking, you know? Like, how, I mean, the bridges, like, of course, the two, like, fields are so kind of, you know, but also climate justice also includes the workers, actually, you know? And I mean, but what you're saying of how Ence is now paying sports activities and of these people to win over, like, I mean, really strategically really good from them, and the other side not doing that is really strategically really bad. Like, to, you know, to not have actually more talking points with each other.
It's like we should organize the transition in a way that we need a plan and we need to understand, I mean, to ask ourselves who are the stakeholders and try to identify all of them and listen to all of them and try to, I don't know, organize a conversation, but it is not. And
but for
I don't know,
Ence it's super good, you know. For Ence, actually, they are winning the most because we are not talking to each other, and they will be paid off in the end, whether the factories being closed down next year or in 10 years, you know. Probably the more delay, the more money they will actually get. So for them, they win either way. And the RIA and the workers and Marine and all of them, they lose regardless.
That was exactly what I was thinking. Like somebody is very interested in this organized conversation is not happening. And I'm especially concerned about those people who are not even in the media, who are, I mean, that municipality in inner lands who are going to have a new big problem. They don't know.
There are municipalities, if I don't remember bad, I think there are municipalities that have said, hey, I'm here.
Cool.
For example, I think Cerceda, where
Meirama is in Cerceda, right? So
yeah. I think they call to have it there. Cerceda is where all the waste in Galicia is treated. So they are specialized in waste, all kinds of waste. So.
That finished.
Yeah, finished.
So without joining what everyone was saying, like what's the position of the union, the trade unions on this? They only are defending the factory, or are there like different unions that have?
No, I think the overwhelming majority has is Comisiones Obreras in the factory, and they are only in the same position as Ence. I mean, I think even we could think that Ence uses the workers to keep the issue in the public arena.
But at the same time, well, I don't know, and maybe inside this union there are conversations we don't know about other ways to, maybe not. That was my question. Like,
I don't think so. I haven't seen anything in that direction. I don't know.
But it's not surprising anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what are they going to do? Like,
yeah.
If there are no talks, and the whole thing is like this is gonna go, and we're not going to do anything to replace that. Like, what are they? Yeah. I suppose the only coherent position from the union perspective is to protect
because also I think there is one issue that's important, that Ence says I'm not going to move anywhere else, I'm going to close the factory. The other part say, no, there is a solution, move in the factory, and Ence says, no, I'm going to close it. If I'm not here, you are going to be unemployed because there is no factory. Maybe you can move to our factory in Asturias, maybe you can move some of you to our factory in Huelva, but there is no more factory.
But they have I mind that they have a power of negotiation, somehow, because they have hundreds of salary people that they have to fire in case they close. They have a lot of things that they will have to pay, not only the government. So how powerful could they be, organized in a different way? Because they have means.
Well, they don't have. They don't. I don't know if they will have to pay the workers.
Why? Because
it's not their fault.
How is it possible it's not their fault?
Because they close because of legal provisions, not because they want to close. I don't know how it would be. I don't know. I'm not expert in labor law, but maybe Ence doesn't have to support. That is the unemployment system that is going to support what happens then.
But then, I don't know, the unions could have a different positioning as well. Short term, yes, you can defend the jobs as well, but they could making alliance with with other people that are trying to move the factory, or just trying to get an agreement to get money to found new jobs. There are many other ways to. I guess that this is the short term. Short term and as well pessimistic, because they know that the government is the government that they have, and because they know that the power here takes the decisions in a way that will not benefit them. It's context clause.
And Ence also has done other things in all this way. For example, in the past, it kind of tried to push everyone, saying that they would make some investments to have more employment making the new tissue factory. So they promised a lot of things. I'm going to have a new factory with more workers, and this is a way to close the cycle in Galicia because we plant trees, we produce circular economy, yes. And then we have the tissue factory, but it never did that.
But the court case for the environmental reasons, that seemed quite successful. I mean, not completely, you know.
Yeah. Most of the court cases are quite positive. There have been some drawbacks sometimes, but most of them, and there have been several, because I didn't tell you some more, more legal issues that have been there, because there was also one contesting that with the privatization process, the nature of the person, the juridical person that was the holder of the concession was different. That was another thing that was contested. It's not the same corporation, it's another one, because before it was a public corporation and now it's a private corporation, so it's not the same thing. And those that also won the trial, but not because a formal issue, because they weren't, they didn't have an answer from the administration. It was administrative silence. So the tribunal decided that answer had to be answered. So we had several issues that went to the courts, and most of them were successful, but with no real changes on the. Well,
so
there is one change. I think the change is that the final moment is closer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You said that there is no dialogue between the local Ence and
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's really conflicted, right?
Very. I don't know if you have seen that quite often the workers go to the municipal meetings that are made in a public place next here. They go there, they interrupt, they shout, and so on.
They punch the mayor.
Yeah, they go to the They go to the festivities, and when public discourses are being said, they are shouting and screaming and so on. So it's quite conflicted, the relation.
And it was from the start, it was like this?
I don't know, I think so.
Okay.
Well,
what a possible.
And who works in the factory? Like, is it is it actually local people or also people?
I think so. I think it's more or less local people.
It's local people.
Yeah.
Usually, is there anything around class? Is it middle class, lower class, or does that not really exist in this country?
I don't think so.
I think they are working class. There is a documentary, that I watched a couple of months ago, but it's in Galicia, in Castilian, and I think it's very well made. And maybe you can send the link. It's a way to train, to exercise your Spanish and Galician. But something that is never discussed, or is rarely discussed, is the fact that Ence replaced a very flourishing community of seafood pickers, collectors in the fishing industry that sustain more than 10,000 people in the area. So when we are talking about jobs and livelihood, it was really a disruption. So there is, for me, it's a clear case in which you don't have gain. In other industrial area, you see that industry came and gave a lot of jobs. But in this case was really like a confrontation, and it destroyed many family life. Like they used to collect mussel and pickles and cockles for generation. Yeah, well, it's very complicated.
But it's the same for the eucalyptus as well. Like what is happening with this land, like and with the forest as well, like with all the things that we are losing from within the forest, like non-economically speaking, like visually, like even for eating or whatever. Even the possibilities if we want to relocalize some part of agriculture or so there is no, for example, are there like studies that try to, for example, to get like what's gone or what's missing?
There are.
Yeah, I think so.
No, there are many studies, and actually there is a very conclusive study that proves that the same hectare of chestnut trees or oaks worth double than an hectare of eucalyptus, because with chestnuts, you can produce chestnuts, you can sell chestnuts, but you also have mushrooms, you also have wildlife like wild boar or other fruits of the wood, no, that you can use. And with eucalyptus, you plant it, and after 10 years you sell, and then you need to fertilize because the soil is very degraded, it's sucking a lot of water.
But it smells very good.
Hey, but he loves
No, it does smell good, yeah. I love the eucalyptus smell, but...
I spent any time in koala for years in the eucalyptus, you know, the koala. I read somewhere that Galicia coverage of eucalyptus is more than Australia now, something like that. Okay, so feel free to contact Alba. Alba, I don't know if you want to say something about the H2020 project that you have.
It's almost finishing. We have the final meeting in 1 month. It's about water reuse and fertilizers taken or that we get on water, and we had to do the legal part. So really, I don't think it is quite interesting because it is quite complex regulation, the fertilizers regulation. So we did that.
Okay.
I work on circular economy, environmental law, anything you need.
Me, Khalid and Bryce, we are going to give some lecture in the Master on the Master of Economic Development in Santiago with Xavier Ence. And yeah, you are more than welcome to join us. We'll go to Santiago. Santiago is wonderful. We can spend like 1 day there together. Okay. Do you mind if we upload the video on our channel?
If it's not terrible, yeah. Please make a
No,
quality control.
we have a problem with the material on Ence. There is literally nothing in English on Ence. The only thing that we found was the project of Joan Martinez Alier in Barcelona. They have an atlas on environmental conflicts, but just a small paragraph. And also for the Wind Observatoire here, there's Xavier Simon. So we are trying to make the Galician conflicts open to the world in